Welcome back to Resistance Chicks. We are your hosts, Leah and Michelle. Today is the 31st of May.
My hat matches your shirt.
We're kind of in a little bit matchy. We did that on purpose. So here's the thing. I want to thank everybody that helped to tweet out and Facebook and everything, because we lost our Resistance Chicks channel today and got it back. We were censored. We were told that we were spam and fake news, essentially. And it's back thanks to you guys. We had so many people backing and supporting us, and so we feel the love.
Thank you so much, you guys. It was unreal how you guys came out to help us. So.
Exactly. But in the meantime, while our Resistance Chicks channel was down, there was another devastating car bomb in Afghanistan, killing...
Well, it's over 80 at this point. Like several hundred.
400 people injured.
I'm going to take you to the Fox News report, and then we're going to kind of break it down for you. Remember, this is the season of Ramadan. It's a season of fasting and prayer for Muslims.
Right.
And you would think that it would be a great time of reflection and peace. But for those extremists,
right,
it's not.
Just in the last few minutes or so, Afghan officials now saying the death toll is up to 90 people and more than 400 injured in this blast. And they're warning these numbers could still increase even further over the course of the next day or so. This was a massive bomb just outside the main diplomatic area in downtown Kabul. This is an area that anyone who spent any time in Kabul has...
I wanted to point out, this was an attack on civilians and the Western embassies. There were BBC journalists who were killed and injured. And so you've got it was right outside the German embassy. So this was an attack on anybody associated with Western
seen government or gone through pretty regularly. The crater from the size of this blast was 13 feet deep in a concrete road area. I mean, this was a big area where a lot of trucks go through. This was a main road, and the crater was still 13 feet deep. The blast was felt and did damage more than a mile away across all of Kabul. There were injuries and significant damage, not only to the German embassy and the Turkish embassy in that area, but also to a local television station that was right there. Now, neither ISIS nor the Taliban have claimed credit or responsibility for this attack. The Taliban actually have even condemned it, saying that there was civilians in the area, but ISAF and international officials are looking at both of those groups because they've carried out this type of attack previously in Kabul and really across the country. But the real concern is, how did this vehicle, this large tanker truck full of explosives, get into the middle of the diplomatic area? There was a checkpoint there, but this vehicle had to get through multiple checkpoints to get there. And it really does suggest, once again, that the Afghan security forces are not up to the task of protecting not only the diplomatic area, but the larger city of Kabul and really across the country. This is what the White House is struggling with right now. There are talks about sending more U.S. troops. The Pentagon is pushing to send roughly 5,000 or so more U.S. troops into Afghanistan. The White House is weighing this offer, this contemplation about expanding the U.S. presence in Afghanistan once again, but there are obviously real reservations. What will these U.S. troops do if they're there? And what type of impact would they have on the battlefield against the Taliban in the first place? And would we see a significant increase in U.S. casualties there if the U.S. and the Pentagon do send additional troops there? That's the real...
So we are going to cover our take on being in Afghanistan in a second, but I want to continue with this specific attack. Kabul attack, BBC workers among victims in Afghanistan suicide bombing. The driver of BBC team confirmed dead and 4 journalists injured. Corporation confirms in one of the biggest attacks ever seen in Kabul. 4 BBC workers and their Afghan driver were caught up in the suicide bombing outside of the German embassy in Kabul. The corporation has said the driver killed in Wednesday's attack was named as Mohammed Nazir, a father in his late 30s who had worked for the BBC for more than 4 years.
Is that his picture?
Yeah, here's his picture.
Wow.
And there's some pictures here of, I know you probably can't see it because the thing here on the top, but the Taliban has denied responsibility for the deadly car bombing, truck bombing, You can see people carrying people. I mean, this was huge. Just absolutely.
Once again, though, it must be, we have to address the elephant in the room, and that is this. Unfortunately, in the Western world, we have prejudices. And when it happens to London, and when it happens to even Russia, when it happens to all of these places, we feel it a lot more than when it happens in the Middle East. We just kind of gloss over it. But just take a minute and transfer those numbers of 90 dead and 400 injured to, let's say, the Manchester bombing.
Right.
And it kind of brings it to light a little bit more.
Most of the victims in the Kabul bombing appear to be civilians on their way to work during the morning rush hour. Here's another map where you can see the Turkish embassy, the Iranian embassy, the German embassy.
So there's the British embassy, Iran, Turkish, Indonesian. And this is where the blast was.
Right. Now this was interesting. The Afghans blame the Haqqani and Pakistan. So I guess the Afghans would probably know best who actually is their enemy. And if the Taliban is saying, we don't do this, we're fighting the U.S. troops, we're fighting the West, we don't want to kill our own people.
Yeah.
You would think that they would claim this.
Right.
And so Afghan intelligence officials have blamed Taliban-affiliated militants with the help of Pakistani security services for a truck bombing in Kabul that killed 90 people. Up to 400 others were injured when the suicide attacker drove into the capital's diplomatic quarter. The blast left a 16 feet, while the other guy said 13, so a giant crater.
Yeah, big.
Right. And then many of them were women and children. So all the embassies around there, China, Turkey, France, India, and Japan, also reported damage. More than 50 cars were destroyed or damaged in the area. The Afghan Intelligence Service, NDS, said early findings show the Afghan Haqqani militant network, with the assistance of the Pakistan Intelligence Service, ISI, carried out the attack. In a statement, the NDS said, these terrorists once again prove they don't represent any religion and they only carry out such coward attacks to please their Pakistani masters, which is against all Islamic and human rights principles. The Haqqani group is fighting U.S.-led NATO forces and the Afghan government. So I think I probably misspoke there, so forgive me. So they are blaming, I guess it's a Taliban-ish. Like, the problem is that these how do you label them all?
Right.
It's a group of guys. and we're fortunate sometimes that we can call ISIS is new.
Right.
ISIS is new. Is ISIL and ISIS before it was Al Qaeda.
Right.
You know, you've got Al Nusra. You've got all these different terror cells, these militant groups, and it's great when you can put a face to it or a name to it. Right? Who is the enemy? And it feels so reminiscent of Vietnam. It's sickening. It's twisting to your stomach.
Well, my take on it is this. We have gone into so many countries. We always bring you guys the 7 countries in 5 years that they have this agenda, right, to overthrow powers and governments and things like that. We have done so much, and this includes the UK. The UK and the United States, we have done so much damage in the Middle East.
Countries.
So regardless of Muslim, Islam, whatever, this is terror because of things that the United States and the UK and other Western countries have done in the Middle East, creating civil unrest. And actually, we are funding the very things that help cause these attacks.
Right. I mean, here's the thing. Where do you think they're getting their money from? From the poppy and the opium, and then it comes in. We talk about this all the time. We're going to keep talking about it. It comes into the United States, and our young people get, shoot up the heroin. And before we went in, the poppy, I want to say, I don't know off the top of my head the percentages, but I know right now it's about 90 to almost 100% of opium for heroin is coming from Afghanistan. And we facilitated, our governments facilitated.
And there are multiple reasons for it.
When you look at the corruption in Afghanistan,
primary.
Who was the guy? Dog Company. We did a segment on him. Look up his book. He's a U.S. soldier who the corruption that went on in the American military, how he wasn't able to do his job, and then he was the one who got kicked out. Look at the Bocce Boys, our Bocce Boys video, Google that, and you'll see that our soldiers go over there, and these Afghanistan soldiers, they take on these boy lovers, whatever.
Little boys,
it's an Afghan,
and they dress them up as little girls.
People say it's not a Muslim thing, that it's an Afghan thing. That's fine.
And our soldiers are told that they have to look the other way and allow this child molestation and prostitution.
So we haven't done anything good at all in Afghanistan, and like we've been there 16 years, and so when something like this happens, it's awful.
And blood is on our hands.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, we've got to get out of policing the world. We've got to get out. We're going to take you to our next segment. It's all about policing the world. Pretty much all of this is our next segment is about George Soros.
The guy just said, now we're talking about sending in 5,000 more troops. Now, this is the way Michelle's conspiracy theory mind does work, because if we focus on conspiracy theories, I have no problem throwing what's going on in my mind out to you. I have to tell you, I do not put it beyond the elites, beyond the New World Order, to create something like this. There's nobody that's really exactly taking credit for this just yet. And even if there was, I would still have this theory. If we're wanting to send in even more troops after something like this, then I have to question who is actually behind it. Okay? There are people in the West that are evil enough to do something like this just to perpetuate a war, and us sending our troops over there. They have to have reason. All wars are bankers' wars, and wars equal money, and they have to have reasons to continue them, right? War with Russia didn't work out so well yet. All right, they haven't created that yet. They were trying. So they have to continue these wars everywhere. They're all over the world.
What they need, that they've had to come up with weak-minded people.
Yes.
Because we have the internet now, and we have reporting now that we can do self-reporting. And so they have, the elites, in my opinion, have, like the blue whale guy in Russia, in Russia, they send out feelers. There's millions of Muslims. And those Muslims are not all going to be terror bombers, okay?
No.
Okay, so the numbers go down and down and down, and they encourage the strict Wahhabism in Saudi Arabia.
Right.
They encouraged the Iranian Revolution in 1979, which took women from being able to wear their hair down, and they look like American women.
Dude, they could go to the beach and wear bikinis. I don't even wear a bikini.
Right. They went from like a westernized Iran,
and then they have to be completely covered head to toe,
to an Islamic ideology, right? So when we talk about Islam and we talk about Muslims, here's the thing, we see both, we see this, we see it why. We see why they take people and they control the weak-minded. It takes a weak-minded person to be a suicide bomber.
Right.
It takes a broken, mentally unstable person, mentally ill person to become a suicide bomber. And so they go after the young people. They go out and they instill them with these crazy ideas that, you know, you're going to have these virgins and you're going to do this, you're going to do that, and then they force them to do it. You know, then they promise, oh, take care of your family and we'll do this and we'll do that. And it's total brainwashing. And George Soros and the elites, there's a whole group, Bilderberg groups are actually meeting right now on the trouble of Russia. They're going to meet together. We're going to talk about that for a second. On the Russia problem. You're the problem. You are the world's problem. Because right now, we would be fine without y'all. Most people just want to get along.
Right.
Okay?
And here's another thing.
Even the communist ideologies and all these things, you can trace them back to elites.
Right. We need to wrap this up. But lastly, I want to say this. Unfortunately, wars, when we have, it's kind of like watching your siblings fight and you can't do anything about it, or whatever, however you want to say it. There are going to be factions in the Middle East that fight each other. We can't do anything about that. It's not our job to step in and fix it. Okay, so everybody keeps asking the question, why are we going over there? Why are we trying to police the world? Guys, it's deeper than that. We're not trying to police the world. That's a cover. Okay?
We want
They all want war. That's the whole point. They just want oil and war and money. And that is what it's all about. It's not about us trying to fix any problems. Because if it was, the problems would be fixed. Because the United States really is good at fixing problems. Why aren't we fixing them? Because that's not the goal.
We can't fix the problems in the Middle East because Google the different sects of Islam and they don't like each other.
No, but what I'm saying is I'm going to disagree with you 100% because the United States is very, very powerful. If we wanted to go into the Middle East and actually accomplish something, maybe not squash it out completely, but make it so that events like this hardly ever happen, we could do that.
Well, this is...
We're over there. We've spent 16 years and gotten nothing done. No, not because we can't, but because that's not the goal.
Since the beginning of Islam, Muslims have been fighting each other.
I know,
you're always going to have Muslims fighting each other. You're actually always going to have war between Muslim countries.
Yes.
But you're not going to have suicide bombers in Western.
What has happened right now?
Western, so you weren't disagreeing with me.
Okay, well, I'm not trying to say that I'm disagreeing with you, but what I'm saying is, yes, they're always going to be fighting each other, but what is happening with this massive, even their little fights, their little fights have turned into huge fights because of us. And so if we were trying to make it so that their little fights were still little again, we would be able to accomplish that. And we haven't been able to do it, but that's only because that wasn't the goal. That's all I was trying to say.
Well, all I know is that when I Google and I start to look up the different sects of Islam, they've been fighting each other since Muhammad died.
Right.
They've been fighting each other, and they're going to keep fighting each other because they have different ideologies. And
yes.
They
I'm not disagreeing with you on that at all.
Right. So I'm just saying that there's going to be wars and fights in the Middle East. There will never be peace in the Middle East. There won't be.
Right.
There just won't be peace.
But this kind of thing we could squash out, and we're choosing not to.
We perpetuate the Syria... Gaddafi's
we fan the flame, essentially. There's going to be these sparks, right? There's going to be these little wildfires here and there. This has turned into an inferno, and we keep throwing coal on the fire in the name of, well, we're trying to put it out.
I think maybe what you're saying is, when you look at the states like we talked about, Iraq and Iran, Iran was in kind of a secular mindset. Iraq was more secular than it is now. Syria was a secular state. Turkey was actually a secular state. Now it's becoming more Islamic.
Thanks to Erdogan.
They want to become an Islamic state. And so whenever you have these totalitarian leaders who rule by the sword, and then they back it up by saying, you know, this is also our religion, and you have to do it, you have to follow the laws, or you're going to go to hell, not just being punished by the government, then it gets tricky.
It does get tricky.
And so...
All right, so, I mean, you guys can form your own opinion, but we want to hear from you and what that opinion is in the comments. So we're going to round off this segment for now. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Mass Faith 3 and Resistance Chicks. Ring the bell for notifications. Find us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. We love you. God loves you. And God bless. Lastly, we're going to be going to the Red Pill Expo June 23rd and 24th. It's in Bozeman, Montana, and we want to see you guys there. All right, we love you.
Was called